So thanks very much for all turning up. Because there's so many of you, and because we're going to be working in iterations of group work, if I do this, it would be fantastic if you could follow me like you did just then, and then we can sort of just pause, have a bit of a discussion, and then move on to the next iteration. Is that okay? Everyone with me? Great. Thank you very much. Right, I am Dee Wauchope. I work for ThoughtWorks. My plan for today, I've got an hour and 45 minutes of your time, which is quite a long time, and I'm not planning to do a break in the middle of that. So obviously, if you need to go in and out for whatever reason, then just, once you're in your groups, clear it with your groups, but just do it. You're not prisoners. Hopefully, you'll find it engaging. We are going to talk about imagining work, so using physical space to visualize, plan, and track work. I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes, hopefully, if I can keep to my timings, about some of the techniques that we use with clients at ThoughtWorks. Many other people do many other things. I can only speak from my own experience. And then I have a plethora of stationery. So if you're a stationery junkie like me, you'll be quite excited about getting your hands on some of these things. And then we're going to spend the remainder of the time actually working in groups, creating some visual walls on these lovely flat black surfaces that we've got up here, so creating some lovely colour. Okay? Sound good? If anyone's not happy, you can leave now. No? Okay. Let's continue then. Incidentally, if you do want to ask any questions at any time, if you could just put your hand up, I'm happy to discuss it as we're in the flow, because that's probably quite a good time to ask. If something kind of triggers you, then just ask at the time. Yeah? So what we're going to talk about today, why we use visual techniques. Then I'm going to show you some real-world examples from some of the projects that I've been on and some other ThoughtWorks projects that I've stolen ideas from. Then we're going to build a wall together. I did have all sorts of ideas about putting up a meme of building a wall, but when I Googled it, the only thing that I could find were lots of things about Mexicans and Trump, so I thought that might not be particularly appropriate for our session today, so I didn't bother. And then at the end, once we've sort of got our lovely visual walls built, we'll have a bit of a wrap-up, talk about some of the impressions that we had of working that way, what were some of the challenges maybe, what we might do differently if we'd have had the whole knowledge at the beginning, how we had to adapt along the way. So this is the obligatory slide that I have to show you in order for my employer to allow me the time to come to the conference. So you can read this lovely thing about how wonderful ThoughtWorks are. I work for a smallish area in ThoughtWorks. Obviously, ThoughtWorks primarily is custom software delivery, so we've got a lot of delivery teams. I work more in the advisory space, so change and transformation in organisations. You can use visual management techniques in both. This is also just a little caveat. So the examples that I'm going to show you are based on actual artifacts from actual projects. I have blurred some of the post-it notes. I've changed the names to protect the innocent and more particularly client confidentiality, because not all clients like to have their business shown to random people at conferences. So why do we use visual techniques? Before we start, I love this quote from a fellow thought worker in Australia. I've never actually met him, but I just love this. When I was starting to look at doing this presentation, this is about factual, credible reporting, not arts and crafts. So yes, we use a lot of Post-its, we use a lot of Sharpies, we use a lot of other lovely stationery, but there's always a purpose to it. It's not just to have a lovely time together and make pretty walls. That there has to be a purpose to what we're trying to do. So using visual techniques like the wall that you can see there, the reason that we mainly do it is because actually people process visual information a lot quicker and more easily than they do written text. So if you were to try and write down in a document everything that you wanted to cover in a wall, it would actually be quite a lengthy document, and it would probably sit in a folder somewhere, and probably people might read it when they start a project, but then they'd never go near it again. If you try and capture the information in a tool, that's great if you need to hold it digitally, but actually it's very hard on one screen to be able to display as much information as you can on some of the walls that we use. So, really good reasons to use visual techniques. There are some other sort of reasons up there. I think it's a great way of communicating more widely than your actual team as well. So I always like to place walls in places where senior stakeholders can actually see them and very easily find out what the team are working on. You know, I had one customer where we actually had our wall outside the CEO's office, and every time he went in and out of his office, he could actually see what was going on. Now, when we first proposed doing that, the team felt a little uncomfortable about that because that's extreme transparency. But actually, he loved it. You know, he loved being able to just see, you know, and he'd occasionally go up to it and say, oh, you've got a blocker there. What's all that about? Oh, tell my PA, she'll sort it. You know, that sort of thing. But I mean, great for getting things done. So you've got this visibility and transparency. You've got the opportunity to communicate with a wide range of people, not just those that you're immediately working with, so stakeholders. You've got a focal point for meetings, so you can gather people around that wall and discuss what you see on it. What's quite important is you can actually tangibly pick things up and move them, which really means that people buy in to actually using that wall as well. So physical versus digital walls. I sort of told you a little bit about if you've got a screen that you can't see as much information on it, maybe not everybody actually has access to that tool or would think to go and look in that tool in the same way as they would at a physical wall. But what if you're working with a distributed team? You know, what do you then do? Do you have a physical wall in each location? We've done that sometimes. So you literally have carbon copies of the same wall, and when you're on a stand-up or some other meeting, people are actually moving things at the same time in tandem. You could use sort of virtual meetings and have a webcam looking at the wall. I've done that as well, or even just a team member with a laptop. We've done that many times. Somebody's standing there with a laptop and kind of moving it in the appropriate place. So whatever you need to do to kind of get over the barrier of not having everybody in the same physical space is good. Sometimes you also need an audit trail of the information. And because you're physically moving things, that's not such an easy thing to have. But again, you can overcome that by either duplicating the information in a tool so that you've got that audit trail, or in fact, we had one customer where we took a picture of the wall every day at the same time, and we sent it to his PA, and they eventually made a video that actually showed how things moved on the wall over time, and he then used that as a sort of training opportunity for other people in the organisation as well to sort of show them the type of techniques that we use. And use lo-fi methods. You know, a digital version of a wall could be as simple as just taking a picture and capturing that. You know, start lo-fi and then build out as you need to. So some real-world examples. Again, I like this quote from another fellow thought worker. It isn't good enough to just build a visual display of information. You need to build one that has a goal in mind. So thinking about why are you building the wall, taking a little bit of time to design it and prototype it before you actually put it up, because some of these walls can be quite big and have quite a lot of rows and columns, depending what you're trying to capture on them, but making sure that you've got that goal in mind. So some different types of visualization. There are lots of different types. I found this amazing website. In fact, it's so amazing that I'm going to attempt to show it to you, which could be interesting if this goes wrong. Here we go. So what's really cool about this, and I don't mind advertising somebody else's thing, look, you hover over it and it pops up and shows you. So I thought this was cool anyway. I thought this was really cool. So check it out. Do you know what? Haven't got my glasses on and I can't see the present icon. Here we go. One of the perils of getting older, I'm afraid. Right, so lots of different visual techniques. A lot more of these are sort of for strategy type of work. I wouldn't necessarily, recommend them for team walls, but use what's going to work for you. So, and what do you call them? There are these terms like information radiator, big visual canvas, I tend to just call it a visual wall, whatever you like. It doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as it's going to provide value in displaying the information that you want. And it could be quite a big, complex wall, Or in fact, it could be like the one in the sort of lower right over there, which was used to track defects on a project. So have an idea in mind and then design your wall around that idea. You can also use it for workshop outputs. So we've got some examples here. We've got the shoot for the moon visual that I like to use. I can use that for retrospectives or futurespectives. So if you're using it for a futurespective, the moon is where you're trying to get to. The asteroids are the challenges that are in your way. The rocket ship is what's propelling you forwards. And if you like as well, you can even have the gravity of the Earth is trying to pull the rocket ship back. So working in sort of 4 iterations with people, putting post-it notes up around that, doing some grouping, really good way to capture some information about what people want to achieve out of a project early on. Hopes and fears sessions. So again, you know, what are the good things? What are you hoping to get out of what we're doing here? Actually, what are the things that you're a bit worried about? Really great to capture those early on, because if you capture those, then you'll understand what the concerns are and you can actually try and do something about it, rather than just making assumptions about what people will be concerned about. Business model canvas up in the right over there, great way of sort of capturing information about your organisation, the product, sort of finances, so that you've got everything in one place in terms of sort of creating a business model, thinking of business plans and how you're going to sell those to your board or whatever. Vision and goals in the middle there. This is from a project that we did. We're no longer firefighters, we're analysts. You know, great, this is where we're trying to get to. This is the point of our project that we're working on here. And these are some of the goals that we have. And then bottom right, we've got an example of a sort of program status. So this was a program. Anyone that came to our session yesterday would have seen this before. It was a session where we had a big program of work with 23 different initiatives that were being worked on in parallel. And we did a session after about 6 months to sort of look at what were the achievements. You know, the green post-it notes were the achievements. Yellow post-it notes were what lessons have we learned as we've gone along that we want to share with everybody else. And the pink post-it notes were the risks that we have. You know, what are the risks to us actually being able to achieve this? So lots of different visual ways of actually trying to depict information and share that information with everybody. Where would you put your wall? Well, I wouldn't advise, some of these are sort of long-term solutions. You know, we've got something on the floor here, we've got a table. This was a retrospective that a team did in a taxi on the way to a night out. So on the window of a taxi in the bottom right there. You know, ideally a nice big piece of wall like we've got in this room here. Ideally a public space, as I said earlier, so that not only the team but other stakeholders and just other random people in the organisation can see it. And a designated area that people can meet in front of. So it's important also to sort of think about having a number of people congregated in front of it and having the space for that. You know, if you don't have a wall, windows will do. It's not as easy to actually see the information and take pictures of it. Or even a movable whiteboard like we had in this office space here. You know, and we actually left that whiteboard out in the open space so that people could see it and wonder what the heck this thing was that people were wheeling around from time to time. What kind of information? You know, I talked about some workshop outputs that you could use, but anything that's useful for you and your team. So this is from that same program with the 23 initiatives. This is our dependency map. We did this at the initial kickoff workshop. The reason it's round is because we actually had one of those sort of round cabaret tables. So we just put a piece of brown paper on that, cut round the outside of it, put the 23 different initiatives around the outside, and then people used string to sort of say where they had dependencies on other initiatives. The ones which are hanging off are where there were dependencies on external. So like IT was, you know, there were a lot of dependencies on IT to do something. These are the ones kind of hanging off the end. And it was great for capturing the information. We did actually then synthesize that information down, and each of the 23 initiatives kind of captured that individually. But we kept this up on the wall because it was a great way of remembering that it is a bigger program and there were a lot of interdependencies to manage. It was also fantastic because it was actually on the wall of a corridor that people went down to get to some meeting rooms. So lots of people would walk past it and stop and look at this. What the heck is this? Why is there a spider on the wall? In the top right over there, we've got a sort of progress board. This is for where we were setting up a coaching community at a client. So trying to ensure that they were able to deliver the training courses that we'd developed for them. and take on sort of coaching and enablement activities so that when we as thought workers left, they were in a position to sort of do things for themselves. The red and white cross is a risks matrix. So, you know, however close the risk is to the middle indicates how high the risk is. So just by placing post-it notes in a sort of, what would you call that, a square with a cross in it, you can sort of quite quickly get some information out there for people to see. And at the bottom here, we've got some examples from my previous client's delivery wall. So we've got some team metrics. You know, what are we measuring as a team? What's our baseline and where are we measuring from? We've got a team happiness score so that we can take a trend, because this was for a team that we were working with the client as a co-source team. So we wanted to deliver some software, but we also wanted to enable them and work with them, sort of pairing with them to do that. So we really were very interested in the team happiness. And an optimistic delivery date. So not one set in stone, but one that we're shooting for. You know, everybody wants to know when something's likely to be delivered, but managing expectations around it by saying it was an optimistic one. And then just at the back there, we've got you know, a team calendar and who's out. You know, who's off sick, who's maybe out on holiday, just for capacity planning purposes so that we know where everybody is. So lots of different kinds of information there. So some recommendations for you. Add a title. It's really good to understand what the wall is being used for. So if you do get people that aren't involved in the wall in any way, they can sort of quite easily understand what it's about. And also add a key. So you know if you're using different colours of post-it note, etc., to indicate different things, people can understand that as well. Use photos or avatars for people so you know who's working on what. I mean, sometimes avatars are quite a fun way to go, and not everybody likes to have their photo taken. Consider having a separate column on a progress board for things that are blocked or waiting so that it's really clearly visible why you're not progressing on something, or just use a red post-it on that card, you know, with the blocker written on it, and maybe even the date that the blocker started so that you can track the progress of actually trying to resolve that. Think about how you want the wall to flow. For a progress board, you might want the wall to flow left to right, but there may be other times when you actually want to show, maybe on a timeline or something, you actually want to go top to bottom of the wall. Make it interactive so that people will physically interact with it and buy into it more, and make it fun. You know, make it a creative exercise so that you not only get people's creative juices flowing, maybe they're a bit happier at work, but also they're more likely to engage with the wall. And these were the photos that we had from a project that Julian and I were on that we talked about yesterday. And then some last tips and techniques. Use black pens. Large, clear, uppercase letters so that everybody can read it. There's nothing worse, especially as I get older and need my glasses, than trying to decipher somebody's handwriting on a post-it note. And Sharpies are excellent. I'm not sponsored to say that, but they're the best things that I've found to do this. Get the super sticky post-it notes to avoid that autumn leaves scenario where your wall starts to flutter down to the ground and you don't know where something came from. Tear off your post-it notes properly. So does everybody know how to do this? This is like, you know, when I do a training course, this is the thing that people always remember the most. So don't tear it off from left to right, because it goes all curly, and then you get the autumn leaf scenario. Don't tear it off up, because it goes curly, and you get the autumn leaf scenario. Pull it. Look at how lovely and straight that is. There you are. You see, that's the value of coming to this session right there. Okay, use tape. So if you've got several swim lanes, you know, use tape to just delineate the swim lanes so it's really clear what they are. And use different colours to represent different types of work or artefacts. Again, it's all about making it easy and fun to use. So that was kind of, oh no, it wasn't. I thought I'd finished. Collaboration Hub. This is some of the examples that I showed you, like the dependency spider and the bells of success were on this. So this was a space that we used on a project at a large bank that we worked at. This is how it looked when we got there, nice and beige and ready for use. This is what it looked like on the day that we left. A little bit more going on. And breaking it down a bit, this is some of the types of information. So we were doing a few different projects here. We had a few different streams of activity going on. We were doing some agile ways of working work. We were also working with them on a big business transformation program with the 23 initiatives that I talked about. So here we've got the sort of guide to what's happening on the business transformation program. Nice picture of everybody involved, you know, the vision and the goals for it. A high-level kind of project plan, so really high level. There were 23 initiatives, so this really just showed when each of them was due to start so that you could get a visual sort of impact picture of that. The dependency spider that I talked about before. Then we had our sort of ThoughtWorks planning. You know, we weren't able to get rid of the lockers from the space that we were in. Nobody actually used the lockers the entire time we were there. So we ended up just putting, you know, creating our wall on the locker space. Why not? So that was sort of our progress board. So what we were working on, the different work streams, who was working on what. Then over here, we've got our bells of success. So capturing the achievements that we made as we went through, and not just dropping them off after they were done, but actually saying, this is something we're really proud of. This is a milestone for this initiative. So we had a sort of fame wall, if you like. And we did call it the bells of success wall because the program manager who was working with us, she got very excited about this concept of bells of success and actually bought a physical bell. So whenever anyone achieved one of these milestones, they got to ring the bell of success. So it kind of stuck from there. Then we had an individual locker door for each of the 23 transformation initiatives to sort of just show status, the goal of that initiative, how they were getting on, any blockers that they had. So really sort of a low amount of information, but quite impactful. You could very easily sort of see just by looking at that which ones had issues and which ones didn't. And then 2 movable whiteboards, one for a piece of work that we were doing aligning business and IT around agile ways of working, and one sort of working with the program leadership around sort of how you just keep across 23 different initiatives and try and manage that. So that's one example of a sort of collaboration hub. This is my last client. This is one of our delivery teams. This is the one I took the happiness rating from. So you can see quite a lot of information being shown there, you know, the milestones and how they're getting through the milestones. They didn't call them bells of success, unfortunately, there. You know, some user discovery information from some workshops that took place, so that work could be sort of pulled into working in iterations. The iteration tracking board piece itself, you know, nice team name and canvas at the top there. So they did a team canvas right at the beginning, how we're going to work together, you know, having that idea of a social contract as a team, what the vision of the team was, and then some sort of, you know, metrics, the happiness rating, the availability, and also they were, because we were enabling people there, sort of ideas for tech hubble topics. So anyone could just come and put an idea on there for something that they'd like to talk about in future. So that was it. I got through in 21 minutes rather than the 25 I set out. Whew. We've got 4 minutes for questions before, according to my timing, we need to go into a group exercise. Does anybody have any questions? Yep.
Do you have any recommendations when you're short on wall space, or perhaps if you've got areas that maybe you're able to have to sort of share with other teams?
Yes. So did everybody hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it? Yeah, everybody heard it? Okay. Yeah, I've used different scenarios at different places. So everything from going into a client and they said, you can't put anything on the walls, we've just been decorated. So we said, okay, when we finish, we'll pay for it to be redecorated. That was one option. Another option is to use, there's a fantastic product called Magic Whiteboard, which you can put up on walls, put things on, and then kind of take off again. It's great, but it does lose something over time. And also, if you've got lots of heavy stuff on it, it can be a little bit of an issue. Brown paper is also good so that you can, you know, take it up, roll it up in the evening, especially if you're in a space where you have to clear things away for confidentiality reasons in the evening. Movable whiteboards, as I showed there, you know, you can just pop it in a corner. If you haven't got a wall free, just try and get something like that. It's just trying to think out of the box a little bit about how to create your wall. Yeah. I wouldn't advise the floor in the example that I showed. I think that was just some workshop outputs that they were then getting ready to put up on a wall. I wasn't actually there for that one. Cool, yeah.
How do you introduce new people in the team and all speakers? Do you allocate them several days for them to read or how do you do it?
Well, hopefully they wouldn't need several days. I mean, what I'd like to do is actually, if somebody new joins the team, is somebody walks them through the wall. So, you know, if you've got the title, you've got the team vision, you've got a key, they should be able to understand it, but it's nicer if a teammate will take them through it as well and sort of say, you know, this is what we use each part of the wall for. You know, these are when we have our regular meetings together and in front of the wall, and sort of just walk them through it so they understand it, and then just get them to start using it as soon as possible. Once they get something in their hand, they're bought in. Yeah?
With remote teams and
Yes.
teams, have you ever experienced it being successful being completely digital, or do you think there's always a requirement that there to be some physical board somewhere?
I just think there are so many advantages to having a physical board that it much outweighs. Sometimes people will say it's a bit of an overhead because you need to capture it digitally, either because you're remote or maybe for regulatory purposes, or so you've got an audit trail or whatever. But I think there are so many advantages to a physical wall, just in terms of getting everybody together in front of something. You can't huddle people around a screen. Even if you've got a big screen, it just doesn't work in the same way.
For everybody who's remote
Yeah.
and distributed.
Yeah, I've never done it solely digitally because I just sort of, it's a bit of an anathema to me. I've always tried to have some sort of physical interaction, whether that is having two walls in two places. It could even be as simple as sending somebody a picture of the wall before the session, having them on a web, you know, on Zoom, or there are other meeting virtual meeting things out there, so they can see as you move things, and then sending them a picture of it afterwards that they can put up in their space. I think anything that you can do to try and make people feel included is always good, and it is harder with physical walls, but I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So it's worth that overhead. Yeah. Yep.
A short remark, there's a book called User Story Mapping,
Mm-hmm.
technical visualization, and there's a part in it about a lesson, which is
Mm-hmm.
Jira, and they say that even they normally have also physical boards to their digital boards, so even if Jira does it, so it should be
Yeah.
should say, okay, you should do it.
That's good. I didn't know that, so that's great. Thank you for inputting that. Any other questions, or shall we? We're now a minute over, so shall we start going into the group exercise? So I think there are roughly 40 of you, although I think a couple of extra people may have snuck in. I did used to be a teacher, you see, so could you divide yourselves roughly into 4 equal-sized groups? I don't want to tell you who should be in your group, but if you could do that, then what we're going to do is, I'm afraid I'm going to ask you to get up and stop being so comfortable and stand in front of one of the areas of the wall. My glamorous assistant, Julian, is... and we might need to move some of this table and chairs over a little bit as well, I think, just to make it comfortable, because we're going to have about 10 people in each group. Thank you. Okay. So, if our 4 groups could congregate... Thank you. If our 4 groups could congregate in front of the 4 pieces of paper that you'll find now on the wall, that would be really helpful. I'm afraid you are going to have to get up. I didn't say that at the beginning, did I? You're going to have to move a bit in this. And we might just move some of these tables and chairs away from the wall a little bit, if that's okay. Oh, my God, I'm clicking. I don't even realise it. Have we thought about how to show priorities? Uh-oh. Oh, what's happening? Okay, have we got some milestones? We've all got some swim lanes by the looks of it. Milestones. Oh. Right, okay, we're going to move on to part 2. So we're now going from 6 months before to 3... What's happening? To 3 months before the conference. What changes do you need to make to your wall to reflect your progress? We're now 3 months before. So were there some activities that you'd planned to do in those first 3 months that maybe you want to show that you've done or you're blocked on or whatever? Do you need to change anything else about your wall layout? Maybe if your milestones... shh. Guys, okay. Oh. Do you need to change anything else about your wall layout? And what's happening? Just what is happening? I need to show this, but... And do you have any rules in place for managing your wall? So have you started to think about how you're actually going to use the wall? So for example, have you got any rules about limiting your work in progress at any point in time? Have you got any rules that you've thought about displaying and dealing with blockers? Okay, you don't have to answer me. You can just think about it. Okay, so let's go on and change the walls. You've got another 15 minutes. I love this. Sorry, it always makes me excited when it works. I don't know why. Brilliant. How did that go? Everybody confident that for their persona, they know what they're doing in 3 months' time? Oh, I'm not hearing any roaring, yeah. How's it going? Group at the back, how are you doing? Good? Fantastic. Lovely, colourful wall, lots of masking tape. How about you guys over there? You're getting there? Fantastic. This group? You're okay? Fantastic. Minimalist, but working. Cool. Of course, what I'm going to do now is give you the next iteration. So we've dispensed with the clicker. We'll show you. Right. It's now 2 weeks before the conference. 2 weeks to go. What changes do you need to make to the wall? And how will you now show your priorities on a 2-week basis? Because I'm guessing that maybe some of your timelines are at the month level. We're now coming to 2 weeks before. Okay? Got about 10 minutes to think about how you would change the wall to reflect where we're now at in our timeline. How's that going? We're nearly ready to go to the conference? Okay, so final one then. It's today. What are you going to do? Do you have your board with you? How are you going to prioritise what you're doing today? Just have a quick chat about it in your groups. I don't think there's much more that you can change to your board now, maybe. I mean, I'm assuming you're not going to bring your board with you. So if there were things that you needed to do at the conference that were on your board, how would you manage that if you didn't have your physical board with you? Take a picture. Absolutely. Take a picture. What else could you do? Have a digital board. What might the digital board look like? Sorry? Might look like that? Yeah? Okay. Just a checklist? Yeah? Maybe you could download the Agile on the Beach app and use that to sort of schedule which sessions you're going to attend and things like that. Okay, how did the boards work? We're going to kind of now, a little bit early, because I think we're sort of at a good point with the walls. I don't want to over-egg it. What would be really great is if each of the groups could actually tell us a little bit about your wall. So if you could maybe start by reading out the persona that you've got, because you have all got different personas. If you could read out the persona, and then if somebody wouldn't mind from your group, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if somebody would be happy to, please share with all of us how you went about building the wall and maybe some of the changes that you needed to make along the way. Is that okay? Cool. Can I pick on this group first?
Yeah.
So what was your persona?
So we're a conference organizer.
Okay.
So we were managing submissions, selecting submissions, we were coordinating the event.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Huddle in if you like.
We kind of started with that kind of...
Okay. I swear this is the final time I'll do this. Thank you. No, it's all right. It's all right. Sorry. You can take the teacher, you can go into a different job, but the teacher always remains. So now, it's Monday after the conference. Your key stakeholder wants to know what you've done. How could you use your wall to tell them, to share that information with them? Any ideas? Yeah? Absolutely. So it can be a great way. There was lady sitting down at the back there who's not part of the session was talking to me earlier, and she was saying, I've got a wall in my office because I found that my manager was coming to me and saying, could you just do? And when you haven't got anything visual up there to say what else you're working on at the moment, it can be really difficult to come up with a no. But if you can actually show, I've got all this stuff that I'm trying to get done at the moment and this stuff backed up, actually, how would you like me to prioritize that request? It becomes a different kind of conversation. So I think great, by visualizing all the work that you've got going on, it can be a really good way of talking to people and sort of managing expectations and also getting them to help you with the prioritization if they're in a position to do so. Cool. What were your success measures? Did anybody think about, you had goals, that was great, so you knew what you wanted to achieve by doing the wall. Did anybody think about putting any metrics against it? I know this is a slightly false situation with the sort of scenarios that I gave, but how could you maybe measure your success?
We didn't measure success, but we think about it as a one of the goals, what people will get from it, what this conference will have.
So how would you understand if you actually met your goal? I know we did have some OKRs on the back wall there, so they obviously did start to think about it. Did anybody else think about how you would actually measure that?
So our team had like number of candidates that were coming through as well, so
Okay, so from a recruitment perspective sort of thing. So have you seen an uplift in numbers of people applying to work at your company? Yeah, that'd be a great measure. Any other measures that you could have?
We measured an uplift on our social media.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, sorry.
amount of bookings for a next conference.
Yes, because you were the organisers, weren't you? So are more people sort of maybe submitting to present and applying for tickets? Yeah, cool. And how would your wall change if instead of doing this as 4 separate groups, you had to make one big wall for all 4 personas and try and run that as a project? Yeah?
I think ours would have been better, to be fair, because we didn't get a chance to think about our audience as much, and actually everyone else was our audience.
Okay, yeah.
So, but also it would have been allowed us to give them more feedback on the timeline.
So,
Just would have needed to be like, I don't think it would have to change. We just need to all move around.
okay. What might you physically need to represent on the wall if you were doing it for all 4 personas? Because it's possible, isn't it? As an organisation, you have people who are part of the organisation committee for the conference. They're going to exhibit, they're going to present, and there's going to be some attendees. So if you were running a sort of, let's plan for the conference, you had your war room, you had your wall, what would that wall look like? Would it just be a bigger, scarier thing?
Would you divide it into multiple components and then have that physical,
Yeah. So you maybe would want to split your goals down. Maybe you'd still have an overall vision, but you'd split down the goals and think about what each of the personas wanted to get out of it. Yeah? Sorry, you wanted to say something?
Maybe, I think for us, we focus very much on tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we've got multiple personas, but now we might be focusing on stories on top of that.
Yeah.
To actually capture the goals of the persona that you're driving on.
Yeah. What about dependencies? How would you manage dependencies? Because if you suddenly got 4 personas, there might be some dependencies between them. How might you think about doing that? I'm not suggesting necessarily that you need a big scary spider diagram, but how could you just easily do that on a wall? Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great way of doing it. I've used that as well. Sorry, lady here was saying that just take a piece of string and just put it between 2 different stories in different swim lanes, just to show. It's just a very visual, lo-fi way of showing that there's an interdependency between those 2 activities that may cause a blocker. Sorry, this lady had something.
In relation to the user stories, so like using a bit of behavior-driven development and being able to understand not just what they want, but why they want it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way we can keep an eye on like what the dependencies are, but also maybe some of the other deeper things and how they're impacting each other.
Yeah, great. And
I would add one flow diagram which combines all those 4 personas together.
You'd have one, what, sorry?
Flow diagrams.
A flow diagram.
For personas communicating with each other, and then add some risk or goals, and what is the priority of which one, and how we communicate with priority of another one.
So would that be sort of, how would you do the flow diagram? Would you do that through swim lanes, or how would you look to do that?
Separate circle-ish with kind of understanding what time frame is there for each one.
So you could have some concentric circles, couldn't you? Maybe even with some areas of overlap to show where your dependencies are. That'd be a completely different way of building the wall. But as long as everybody understood how it was working, then that sounds like a really good way of doing it as well. Cool. So those are all the questions that I had for you. How did you find that? It's the first time I've done this. I wasn't entirely sure how it was going to work out in the timing or with so many people with Post-it notes. I definitely know next time I need to bring 4 rolls of masking tape because we had the great mask. Who's got the masking tape? Saga, did it work as a session? Sorry, I mean, obviously you've got the survey, and if you're not comfortable sharing with me now, that's absolutely fine. It's just if I do this session again, I would love to know how I could do it better. Smaller groups. It's difficult because we sort of toyed with that. Yeah, I mean, we actually had to turn people away. So we sort of said we can't have more than 40 because 10 in a group is kind of the absolute maximum. But yeah, so maybe thinking of more personas. So if we did have bigger space, we'd actually have more smaller groups. Yeah, at the back there.
I think it was really good, and I think it's quite cool to see how much could be done in like 20 minutes or whatever it was. You sit it out, you all stuff on the route, like you can actually get quite a lot of things done with a team in a really short bit of time.
Yeah, it's that group collaboration, isn't it? If you had to sort of go and do it on your own, it might take a bit longer because you'd be thinking it through and analysing it. But when you've got to bounce off each other, I guess the converse of that is that with the bigger groups, if people have got different ideas about how they'd like to do it, that can take a bit of time then for you to sort of compromise and agree as a team how you're going to do it.
So I think it's great for us, and we have like the context of how we work in this way already. I think we're doing this workshop for people who didn't work in an agile way. Having those groups of people, because we kind of understood like why it was important to work like this. But for people that don't know, I think it would have to be like way more focused on this design. I guess if this workshop is targeted at people.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Oh, I've got 3 other people. Yes.
As a positive, I really like the iterative approach.
Okay.
Because I think maybe it was just when we started it, we were trying to get the wall right the first time.
Yeah.
And it's only when we stopped under the retro that we realised it was fine. We've learned a lot of stuff that's improved the wall now.
Yeah.
It's almost like the talk popping out the bottom. For me personally, it worked really well.
Cool, that's good. And I think you have to sort of do that as a team as well, because you won't get it completely right first time. And that's okay. That's okay because we're learning things about how we would make it better. So it's actually good to stop and iterate on it. I think I had 3 other people with hands up. Yeah.
I just personally would like sort of 5-10 minutes to sit and plan with the team who's doing
Okay.
what and how we would work well together. We're all doers, so everyone just wanted to do.
Yeah. Right, okay. So maybe giving 5 minutes at the beginning. So one of the things I thought is that I actually started shortening the time that you had, maybe a bit longer for that first iteration and then shorter iterations as we went through when you were just making tweaks. Cool, thank you.
So something related to that, yeah, just some like reminder little tips. So, because I think we went straight into the problem, but just although we are all agile, we're all very different flavors of agile.
Yeah.
So different tips on like, have you guys thought about your roles? Have you guys, just little reminders? Not rules.
No?
Yeah, just and giving the chance. I think that was the biggest thing when related to that unlearning thing this morning. Like our company doesn't have business analysts, we don't have scrum masters, so having suddenly interacting with people that do a totally different role is it's good. It's really, and that's a positive.
But it's hard as well, it can be hard.
But it's just getting used to maybe saying what everybody does.
Yeah.
So there's some context before we get started, so people know what people's backgrounds are and what they're bringing to it. Because then we could have probably divided up into roles a bit better based on people's skill sets.
Okay.
But that can just go our team.
I think there were another lady at the back there.
Actually, thinking about that, I think in a way we did think, oh, it would be good if we could like break this down into small problems and have some roles assigned to each of us. We were like stretched out of our comfort zone, and it really made us think about like, well, how do we tackle this? We've got this problem, we have to tackle it in a short amount of time. Let's just like go with like a break down smaller problems and deal with it that way.
And part of it was I just wanted to see what would happen if I threw a completely diverse group of people together to see what would actually happen and how they would work together. So I'm sorry, you were guinea pigs to some extent. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think the most interesting thing is the way people solve problems, like the organisers have people pull out.
Mhm.
But I think these are just things that people just kind of invented for themselves.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, let's all pull out, or we can do this. But maybe that needs to be more encouraged from you, where
Okay.
it's like literally giving people a problem that
Yeah.
they expect.
So throwing a few spanners in. See, I was too nice because one of the things that I thought about was actually after each iteration moving the entire group onto the next wall. But then I figured that probably could be a bit. You kind of get attached to your wall, so I thought maybe people wouldn't like that, and then I'd have a mutiny on my hands. So yeah.
What I quite liked in our group was that when we started, we were all working differently,
Mhm.
and so everybody had their own ideas and we were working differently. So, but then later on, we understood where we are good at, and we all made groups and roles as to what they will be doing. So one of the teams were designing the swim lanes, and the others were designing
Yeah.
the tasks. So this all worked quite well, even when we didn't know what each other
Yeah.
does well.
And sometimes it's good to do things outside your role, I think, a little bit as well. You know, try something a bit different. We get quite siloed in our roles sometimes.
Natural process of
Yes.
just
Quite naturally, yes.
building a team.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. Anything else? Any more for any more? Julian?
I just wanted to reiterate something you said earlier, and was brought up here, is that the amount that you achieved in just what was about 30 minutes of activity. If you were trying to form and storm as a team and you were forced to try and use an electronic tool to try and get this, you would just struggle with the configuration of the tool and not actually get anything achieved. By using something so dynamic as that environment, it allows you to form and storm so quickly. You got to a position where you might be able to think about how you virtualize it. We've never got there as quick. You've never made the same rapid progress. And what you achieved in 30 minutes was fantastic. People were so struggling to have to use the tool.
So we will take pictures of all the walls, and we will make sure that they are somehow shared with everybody after the conference. Please feel free to take your own pictures as well. And I think you've all worked really hard, so give yourselves a big round of applause.